Today's guest spent more than a quarter of a century in federal prison, not for violence, but for a crime that still carried a staggering sentence. Michael Santos went from being a young man caught in the drug world to one of the most respected prison consultants in the entire country. While serving time, he earned degrees, wrote books, and built a blueprint for turning a prison sentence into a personal comeback. And surely he did. Now, through his company, Prison Professors, he helps people and families navigate the system, prepare for prison life, and come out stronger on the other side. I am so excited to talk to Michael about what really happens behind those walls, how to protect yourself physically and mentally, the business of prison consulting, and the business of prison in general, and what it's like to go from an inmate number to a business owner helping others face the time he knows all too well. So let's meet Michael. All right, today I have a special guest, Michael Santos, who spent more than 2 decades in prison, and I'm so excited to talk to you and meet you in person and have my audience listen to your story, because it's one I've been telling my husband for weeks now, that I was so excited to meet you. And because you have an incredible story, and I don't want to take away from your story. I want you to tell us your story. So thank you for being here.
I hope you have a lot of time, because it's a long story. So I'm very excited to share it with you and your audience. And I just want to thank you for coming all the way out from Texas to California. And it's just a thrill for me to be able to communicate with you and your audience. So thanks so much for having me.
Yes. Okay. So it all began, well, it didn't all begin in 1986, but a little bit before 1986 you were born, because you went to prison when you were basically a child, I would still say.
Yeah, well, I made
barely an adult.
I made some bad decisions as a kid, and those bad decisions lead us on a path. In 1985, I was 20 or so, and I saw the movie Scarface, and that kind of put me on this path of trafficking in cocaine. I'd never been in trouble with the law before, so I didn't understand that I didn't understand how the system worked. So I thought, well, as long as I don't have cocaine, I'm really not breaking the law. So I would hire other kids I went to high school with to transport it and move it, not knowing that was actually exposing me to a much more severe crime. So I was charged with being a kingpin when I was 23. I started when I was 20. I didn't get arrested until I was 23. I left the United States and tried to make my life in Spain, and was just making every bad decision a kid could make, including on the day of my arrest, which was actually 38 years ago today. We're filming this on August the 11th, 2025, and it was August the 11th, 1987, that the authorities came and put their guns in my face and took me into custody, and I was facing a sentence of life without the possibility of parole.
Wow. Yeah. Did you actually use cocaine?
No, that was against the law. So no, I was really in it for the money. I was just a kid. I saw the movie, fast boats, hot chicks, cars. You're 20 years old. I moved to Miami and was just living that life for a while. And it wasn't even that long, really. It was like 18 months.
Oh my gosh.
I was involved. And then people around me started getting caught. I had some money and I decided to make my life in Marbella. I moved to the south of Spain and started building my life there for a while. I had hired an attorney. I didn't know I was under indictment. I came back and I was arrested on August the 11th.
Okay.
So that was like the last day of liberty for me for 9,500 days.
Wow. That is a long time. Okay. So you get... they come get you and they say you're facing life with the possibility, maybe no parole.
There's no parole at that time. There's a different sentencing scheme at that time. But as a king, there was parole at that time in the sentence, but as a kingpin, I was not eligible.
Okay.
So I was charged as a kingpin. And at the time, I really didn't want to believe that I'd done anything wrong. And I hired the attorney who told me what I wanted to hear rather than what I needed to hear.
Yeah.
He said, with the right amount of money, you can win. And I said, well, great.
Okay. Yeah.
let's go. And it was just turned out that was some really bad advice. And I don't blame anybody but myself because I knew I was guilty.
Yeah.
I just wasn't ready to accept responsibility yet. And so I went to trial. And not only did I go to trial, I took the witness stand. I put my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God, and proceeded to lie.
And you didn't tell the truth.
And I didn't tell the truth. And that jury saw through it and convicted me of every count. And that was really the moment. I'd spent a year in solitary confinement from the time of my arrest till the time I was convicted. But it was really that moment that I was convicted. It was really quite a shock to me because I didn't get caught with drugs. I didn't have weapons. I was just, I thought there's no way they're going to convict me. But I was convicted of every count. And I remember going back to solitary confinement, and that's when I started to realize I'd made a disastrous path in my life.
Yeah. And then from that point forward,
that was a big day. So
your life has kind of changed.
Well, I didn't know that it had changed because I'm in solitary confinement. So I'm not around other people. I've been in solitary for a year. And an officer actually really changed my life. A correctional officer was ironic because I wish I could go back and thank him, but I don't know him. His name's Officer Wilson. Right, try to find that guy again.
Yeah, right.
And he comes to see me in prison, and he asks me, what happened after the trial, because you get to know they pass you your food and so on through the.
Well, and you're just there by yourself.
By myself, and they're the ones that bring you the food, so they kind of know. And I'd been there for almost a year by that time. And he says to me, how did it go? And I said, it didn't go well. I'm convicted on every count. I'm facing life in prison. And I don't know what I'm going to get. But my attorneys are telling me, you should expect yourself to possibly get 70 years. Like, what's the difference, 70 years in life? So, I don't understand it. And at that moment, the officer brings me the first book, and I believe the first book was the biography of Frederick Douglass. And he said, I think this will help you. And I'd been a terrible student in high school, and I'm young, and I read this book, and I didn't know who Frederick Douglass was at that time in my life, but he was born during the era of slavery. So he's the only thing he knows is life as a slave. And until he escapes. And when he escapes, he doesn't go on to lead his own life. He decides to try and change it for everybody left behind. It's in slavery. So he gets an education, and he becomes, he teaches himself to read and to write and to speak. And then he becomes a very eloquent man, and he argues against slavery. And he has this huge role in ending slavery as an abolitionist. And I remember sitting in prison, and you're lying in this cell, right? And you feel the pressure of the walls, coming in. And I remember sitting there and saying, God, maybe that's something I can do. Maybe I can turn this prison journey into something. Yeah. And it gave me hope. And so that's what you need. When you're going through struggle or crisis, you need hope. And then the officer, he'd come and he's leaning against the window, and I'm locked in the cell, and we're kind of talking about it. And I think the officer was a student at the university, so he kept bringing me more books. Yeah. So then he brings me Socrates, and Socrates, I could really identify with the story because he's in jail, and he's facing death, and I'm facing life. So you're going to die in a cell.
I feel
so
like
it's
the
same thing.
Yeah.
So that's why I could identify with this message. And it really helped me to think differently. And I started to think not about what was happening to me, but, well, how could I turn this around? And it came up with this 3-pronged plan that was going to change my life, to focus on people like you and people in your audience, and saying, well, you start asking Socratic questions. And I don't know what that means at that time. Is there anything I can do? Anything? Well, I'm in this place that people like in your audience might not see me as a coke dealer, but rather how I responded to it. And I come up with this, well, there probably is. What is it? And there's this 3-pronged plan. I kind of said, well, they would probably want me to get an education, because that shows I don't want to be a criminal anymore. And so I said, okay, that's one thing I could do. And then another, they'd probably want me to contribute to society in some kind of meaningful, measurable way. Because if I'm doing that, then I don't want to be a criminal anymore. Yeah. And then 3, it was if I could build a support system. And so that became my plan. And I'll always remember when I had that, it was like an epiphany. And I'm sitting in the cell, and they give you these little pencils because everything's a weapon in prison. Yeah. Right. So you have this little pencil, and I write this letter to the newspaper, and I said, hey, you guys had covered my trial. I want you to know I'm going to change my life. When somebody says that and they're facing what I'm doing, sure you are. Yeah. But I said, if you want to know the story, come see me. And so the journalist comes out and there was this story on me and asks me. And I said, I don't know what prison's going to be like, but I'm going to spend every day of my life in there working to change it. And I remember the leads to this front page paper that comes out on I think it came out on a Sunday, just the day before my sentencing, which was on a Monday. I think it was a Monday. And the judge reads the article in the sentencing. Oh. Because it's top of the fold front page. Drug kingpin says he's going to change his life. And I remember the prosecutor stood up, and I'll always remember the sentence. He said, well, Michael Santos says he's going to change his life while he's in prison. But we really believe that if he spends every day of his life in an all-consuming effort to repay society, and if he lives to be 300 years old, our society will still be at a significant net loss. And, that was really something good to hear because it lets you know where you're going. You're going into an environment that obliterates hope. Yeah. And there's nothing coming. And the judge proceeded to sentence me to 45 years. I don't know what that means. Yeah. Because I've been in the hole. So I don't know anything about good time or what. I have no idea what that means. 45 years. I just start processing that in my head. 45 years. I'm 23, so I'll get out when I'm 60. Start doing the math in your head. Yeah, you think
45 years is 45 years.
I don't know what it means. And then I get transferred from a detention center in the whole to the first time I go to a high security penitentiary. Mm-hmm. And it's like thousands of miles away from my home. And you're walking around the yard, and it's the first time I'm out of a cell. So there's a lot of people that hate the prison, but for me, I said, what are you talking about? This is awesome. Yeah. I can see, you can't see anything because there's a 40-foot wall all the way around the prison. So this huge wall, it's like 2 stories high, you cannot see, but you can see the sky and there's blue and you can breathe. Yeah. And it's like, God, but it's very violent and you see it and you're listening to people that are telling you how to serve time in prison. But by then I knew I hated prison. And I'd been in custody for a year, and it feels like life is taken from you. But I had hope, and I had a belief that I'm going to find my way through this journey.
So even though, because I feel like some people would even lose hope from being in the space where you're in solitary confinement, you decide you're going to do this, and then you're kind of moved to a totally different environment now where you're amongst people. I can see how somebody would lose hope from getting from point A to even point B and having to now kind of survive in this whole new ecosystem.
But for me, it was an advantage that year in solitary because I'd never been in custody. And had I been in custody, then I would have been learning to there's a terrible guidance through prison, which I consider to be just awful, that staff will tell you you've got nothing coming. Mm-hmm. And can't do the crime, you can't do the time, don't do the crime. Yeah. And people in prison will tell you best way to serve time is to forget about the world outside and focus on your life in here. Well, I didn't get that message because I'm in there and I'm reading the Bible. And I was never really religious before, but you're reading these stories of the prodigal son or the parable of the talents and this stories that you can rebuild, and you can recalibrate. And that's very meaningful to me. And so when I got to the penitentiary, I had a different mindset that I believed I could become something more. And I didn't know how to process 45 years. And when I got to the pen, I learned, well, I can get out in 26 years. Okay. I can earn, as long as I don't they call it good time. You don't, but it's really not good time. It's the avoidance of bad time. Everybody gets it. As long as you don't do anything wrong, you get these credits. Yeah. And so it's a kind of a flaw. It's very anti-American, right? Prison is as close to communism as we come in the United States. Okay. What I mean by that is in the United States, in America, you can become anything you want, right? The harder you work, you work hard and you build a podcast, and you build a following and people want to hear from you, right? But in prison, all that's taken away. Instead, it's just you measure justice by the turning of calendar pages, which in my view is a flawed system. Mm-hmm. So there's no private property. There's no way to differentiate yourself. They tell you what you can eat, when you can eat. They tell you where you're going to sleep, who you're going to sleep with, what you're going to wear, what you can talk on the phone, right? So it's like the state controls the world, right? It's very different from America, where you can keep up with the Kardashians or you can work toward getting a master's degree and it doesn't matter. Just as your time is your time and that's what you're going to serve. And that's a really flawed system in my view. So when I get there, I learn I can get out in 26 years. I don't know how to process that because I'm 23 when I came in. I haven't been alive that long. So you to put that in perspective, that's 26 years from today. This is 25, so you don't get out until 2051. And how are you going to stay motivated?
Yeah, you can't even. I don't even think you can process that even today.
But really, I could process 10 years.
Yeah,
and that's what I did. I said, okay, 10 years. In 10 years, I'm going to have a college degree. I'm going to be a published author, and I'm going to have 10 people that I don't know that are going to believe in me. And that's what I'm going to do in 10. So I have a plan. Yeah. When you have a plan, you start restoring confidence and you start believing you can become more than what the system says you are.
Yeah.
And that is really what helped me a lot. So it's what started the journey. So prison for me was really fortunate in that I didn't go in there trying to become something that I wasn't. You know, I'm not a gang leader. I'm not a criminal. I'm serving 45 years. And so maybe my sentence is, I have a little bit of a different, having 45-year sentence in prison at that time is like you have got a Harvard degree in that environment, right? You're coming in there with street credibility.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm a kingpin. So I don't have the same complications that somebody might have that has a shorter sentence. Nobody's going to think I'm a snitch or I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And then I knew some mafia guys that kind of ran the prison. And I was just...
How did you know them? Did you meet them there, or
I was a coke dealer? So
yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Like I
was a coke dealer from Miami, and I knew a lot of people. And when I got to the pen, I met people, and words in the prison system is very much a closed system. So word spreads very quickly. Yeah. And I walked in, and the first thing people will say is, "How much time do you have?" And I said 45 years. And where are you from? Miami. Oh, you must know Willie, and I know this, and then I know this guy, and then before you know it, it's the cool guys are kind of the cool guys, and it's just like high school.
Yeah.
So
I can imagine.
You get to know people.
Yeah. And okay, so once you were in, you decided to get a degree, and you did.
So I start. The prison's a violent prison, but I don't know how to do it because there's no school there. Yeah. So I start.
Oh, there's no school at.
No.
Because some prisons now.
There's eras, right? Yeah. So prison is, it runs from the top down. This time when Ronald Reagan was in the White House. So it's a very long time ago. Okay. And it's the war on drugs. Yeah. So there is and there is also a transition happening because we're going from the old law prior to 1987 to this new law where there are sentencing guidelines and taking away of incentives and things of that sort. So, and I'm in a really violent prison at that time. So they don't have a lot of that stuff. So I start writing letters, right, to schools, because I know what I want to do. So I get there, and it's how you find schools. Is I remember still there was a dictionary, and the dictionary at the back it had schools, the names of all the universities in the United States. Okay. The back of the dictionary. Okay. And so I said, okay, so I start writing letters to schools. So my name is Michael Santos. Made some bad decisions. I'm in prison. I really want to get an education. Do you have any programs, right? And, you send, one letter out, you're probably not going to get a response. Right. But if you send 10 letters out,
you might.
Well, I found that you have a 10 times better chance of not getting a response. You got to send 100 letters out. You got to be relentless. You've got to be really driven. Yeah. And so I wrote and I found a school, and they allowed me to enroll. And I remember still getting the books. And that moment, I wasn't a prisoner anymore. I was a student, and I felt
it's almost like online school before online school.
There is no online. I go to prison.
No, but that's what I mean. Like
this is the mail. And the mail, they sent it, and I'm in correspondence school at Ohio University. Yeah, I've never been to Ohio, but I'm in school, and I feel so awesome going to school. And that path is what drove me through getting my first degree in 1992, and then I wanted to go to law school. I start writing to law school, same thing. You start writing to law schools, and they all said you can't go to law school because you're in prison. Yeah. but one of the law schools said you can get a master's degree, and that was Hofstra in New York, And so they said, what would you want to study? And I said, I really think mass incarceration is one of the great social injustices of our time, and I want to work to change it.
Yeah.
And I'd like to create a program that'll help me develop an understanding and mastery of this subject. And they said, okay, well, we don't have a criminal justice program, but we'll create something. And that's how I got started. So I start getting a master. I start working toward my master's and developing that plan, that plan, getting an education, contributing to society, because then I start publishing from prison. And then I'm building the support system of some of the leading penologists in the nation when I'm still in there. So I'm start writing for them and publishing with them, and it's really what helps me build a path to a very different adjustment through a long time in prison.
So you were busy kind of doing your own thing when other guys are maybe, fighting each other or
they're doing their
playing
thing.
Cards or
they're prison is a very closed environment, and I never make a judgment on what somebody else is doing, because the system is very anti-American in my view, and that's what I work to do today, right? I work to change the system. That the system perpetuates intergenerational cycles of failure, and it's typically the poor and the underprivileged that are brought in there, but the system is designed to obliterate hope. And it is designed to keep this failure going, and there is a flaw. It's a flawed system in my view, and not everybody's view, but my view.
But whose view? Because I agree with you, but who do you think thinks the prison system is?
The people that are making money from the prison system. Oh. So there's been a whole ecosystem built around it, right? It's a $100 billion a year industry.
It's a business.
And there are the people that supply foods, people that supply phone systems, people that, they can really exploit people in prison and their families. And so it is what I call one of the great social injustices of our time. Really fortunate that President Trump is a big believer in changing it.
Yeah.
Because there have been massive changes under his first administration and now under this administration. But at that time, it was, a very different era. And the era it's very strange, because I remember when Bill Clinton got elected, and I had this tremendous hope for Bill Clinton, because his brother was serving 10 years for cocaine trafficking.
Yeah.
And, I would have thought that he would definitely understand it, and he would recognize the change. And, had Roger Clinton been convicted under the law that I got convicted of, he would have done significantly longer than he did. So I would have thought that the president would have done it, but instead Biden was in the Senate at the time, and I was very into politics at that time. And, I just had this hope that they passed this comprehensive crime control bill in 1994, which really made things much harder. And it was very surprising. And it just, that's when you saw this massive funding stream go to expand the prison system. And it was just expansion of big government, but prison was part of it. And when I went to prison, there were about 35,000 people in federal prison. It exploded to more than 150,000 people.
Wow.
So it was growing, and there were they would obliterate this good time system, and parole board got obliterated. Funding for school got taken away. So there was a lot of changes that I saw every stage of reform. But when I was in, it was always getting worse. And I was writing to say, what could we do better?
Yeah.
And my message is always this concept of really making it more like America, where the harder a person works, you
learn to be
I call it earning freedom. You should earn to reconcile with society, and we should incentivize a pursuit of excellence. And if we did that, you would say, well, what do you want in America? A lot of people say, well, you should, extract, a pound of flesh, and if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. But I think what we should focus on are results. Right? Yeah. In business, you focus on results, and results are, if you say, what is the best possible outcome of prison? If I were to ask anybody, I think they would say, well, we want to see people come back as law-abiding, tax-paying citizens and full-fledged members of society. Of course, they're going to pay their price, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I think that's what every American citizen wants, is a system that I would say, regardless of what decision a person has made in the past, it's in society's best interest to incentivize the pursuit of excellence. And it's not for me to just say whether somebody has earned freedom or not. That's for society to decide. But the mechanism should be, prison should be the process. It's not the result, right? The result is not lock somebody up. It should be part of the process. What should the result be? A better society, safer communities, right? That's what I would say people should want. And if that's what we want, well, we need reforms.
Yeah, that's true. And that's why you were saying it's not really good time.
No, it's the avoidance of bad time. It's just not
bad time.
Which is a flawed system.
Because you don't do anything good.
Yeah, and that's what happens in prison. So people adjust to that environment.
Yeah.
When you're in that, when you create communism, okay, that it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to wear the same clothes, you're going to eat the same food, you're going to have no control over your house, right? That's communism. That's not work hard and become better. That is, regardless of what you do, nothing will matter. And so if you've got, I will say, even justice, even if you have this concept, I have no problem with having gotten a 45-year sentence, okay? If that's what society says a 45-year sentence is the right sentence for trafficking cocaine, okay. But I will say, by the time I had served 8 years, I was as ready to go home as I ever would be. I had a master's degree. I was a published author. I was young. I could have gone out and built a career. But I had to do another 60, I did 26 years. So I had to do a significantly longer period of time, 18 more years, and at a cost, significant cost. I didn't get out till I was 49. My life was very different at 49 because of the adjustment that I had. But it is a waste of human life, a waste of taxpayer resources, and it is un-American.
Because how much is it to keep a prisoner? Do you know?
I'm sure I definitely know.
Yeah.
So it depends on the security level, right?
Okay.
I was in high security for the first 8 years of my sentence, and that is much more expensive because of the concentration of officers, the security. So that, let's just put a number on it, say $75,000 a year per person.
Yeah, per person.
Medium, let's just number, is probably about $55,000 a year. A little less security, but still $55,000 per person.
Yeah, that is.
Go to a low security prison, it's probably $40,000 a year per person. Go to a camp, it's probably $20,000 a year.
Yeah.
Right? And I would say there's so many flaws with that system that I would say is just it is a commitment to big government that people don't even really understand.
Right.
Because it has been out of the news and out of the work. And that's why I'm so grateful to you for even showing an interest in a true crime podcast where people probably want the salacious details of something, but my view is there is always a problem in society with crime. What we want are safer communities, and recidivism is a huge problem.
Yeah.
And that process that we build is what perpetuates that problem.
Yeah. We were just talking before the cameras went on about a situation that happened in my neighborhood, not too far away, where a child got murdered by another child. One, I think, was 16. I think the kid that died was 16. The 17-year-old had a knife at a track mate, got in an altercation, killed the kid, and now he is facing a trial as an adult, even though he's 17 years old. And so with that will come life in prison without parole.
But I would argue that could be the sentence, but that might not be the result. I'll give you an example. First of all, prison, we should understand, right? If you think of a continuum and you say, okay, let's just say 100 people, right? There's going to be 10 on the left side of the continuum that are not really criminals. It's situational. Something happened in their life and they committed a crime and they're in prison, but they're never going to commit another crime. And something happened. I don't know what it was.
Right.
There's 10 on the other side that are so evil that no matter what they do, there's nothing you can do to change them. They're evil, diabolical. There's 80 in the middle that could go either way, and we're losing those 80.
Yeah.
That young man that you're talking about, he may go in with a life sentence, okay? I'm going to give you an analogy of a young guy that I feature on our nonprofit because it's such an inspiring story to me. His name is Halim Flowers. He grew up in D.C. in a poor area, gang infested. Parents were just as impacted and in prison. Didn't really ever have a shot at life, ever. And by the time he was 16, he was 16, he was involved in a crime where there was a double homicide. He wasn't the person who killed, but when there's a crime and there's a homicide, it's a homicide. And he gets double life at 16.
Gosh.
At 16. And he does the first 2 years in juvenile, and then they transfer him to a penitentiary. And he gets to the penitentiary, and he adjusts, but he eventually realizes he wants to change his life. And he gets an education. Yeah. And he becomes a skilled artist, and he becomes a writer. And, you know, he eventually gets to some prison where one of our prison professors' programs is. And he starts working through it. He starts writing me from prison that he's going to do everything I did. And bottom line is the law changed after he did 22 years, long time, but he came home after 22 years. Oh. And he's home now. And he's this extraordinarily successful artist that in his first year sold $1 million worth of paintings. Wow. And he's the Queen of England bought one of his paintings. Wow. Warner Brothers hired him to do the Shawshank Redemption artwork. And he's only been out for a few years, but he's just this phenomenal force. And he's also an advocate. You know, I work with a lot of advocates of just amazing people that have gone through crisis and struggle, but they didn't allow the crisis or the struggle to define them. They found ways to reconcile and make amends and build. And I would encourage anybody to look at Holly Flowers' story because he's really an incredible force. And I'm always grateful to be able to work with people that have faced struggle. Yeah. And earlier you had on my friend Matt Boyer, who's a guy who's gone similar. You know, he was going through a criminal complication with gambling, and instead of just allowing that to define his life, he reached out to our nonprofit and said, hey, I want to do something with you. I want to volunteer with you. And he's been this incredible source of inspiration that we use to reach 1 million people in prison. Yeah. You know, we reach 1 million people in prison through our work. These guys don't have access to your show. They don't have access to the internet, but they have access to prison professors. And what they need to see is, regardless of what you're going through today, you can sow seeds and build a better life. Yeah. And it's on you to persuade somebody to see you differently. And I'm very proud to be a part of that movement, and very grateful that we have programs now that President Trump has implemented. And I mean, it's ironic that one of the guys that I'm working with right now is his name is Josh Smith, who once did time in prison for drugs, in federal prison, 5 years. But President Trump appointed him to be the deputy director of the Bureau of Prisons right now. Well, that's a good person to It's an amazing story, right? Because he really knows. I mean, he became successful when he got out of prison, and then he wanted to be in community service, and now he's a deputy director of the Bureau of Prisons. So it's very... Are you in contact with him? Yeah, I was just with him in D.C. a couple weeks ago. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of... I was talking with another guy that just this weekend, a black guy that was arrested in teens, and said he could have been serving life, but while he was in prison the first time, he realized it wasn't what he wanted to do. His name is Frank Murphy. He got out and he became an NFL star, was in the NFL for a long time. Now he's like a Christian minister, but also very active in prison reform. And so, you know, I get to be a part of this movement to try and improve outcomes, but it's a very heavy lift because a lot of people don't understand it, which is why I'm really grateful that you're, as a true crime podcaster, is even bringing this kind of message on. Because it's probably not what people expect to hear. No, it's not. But I think all of us, especially that are really into, of course we want justice, right? Everybody wants justice. What is justice? It just depends. No, what is it? Right? It's a great question. It is a great question, but I think it's basically somebody it's probably different for everybody, right? It's probably different for if you have a family member that is murdered, you probably feel justice is something different than. Would that be justice? If somebody goes and serves prison time? I don't know. I mean, I think that's a great question for you to ask for your audience. Well, it is. What is justice? So this happened recently, the Brian Kohberger trial. Do you know this? The awful case in Idaho. Right. And so he ended up taking a plea deal to he said he was guilty so that he didn't get the death penalty. Okay. And a lot of people said that wasn't justice. Okay. And were very upset. One family member in particular also did not think it was justice, but the other family members did,
right?
Okay.
So out of the 4 kids, 1 said no, the other 3 said yes. And so I do think it's different, but I think justice is a punishment that, what you said, society or whoever is making that decision thinks is what should happen.
Yeah, I would say that this is a complication, because if you're young, if you're under 60 years old, I'm 61, right? So if you're not at least 61, you don't know any other system of justice but vengeance. Extract a pound of flesh.
Yeah, I guess what you're saying, vengeance is like what people think,
and that might be what people want. And if that's the case, just shoot people, right? I mean, that's fine. If that's what justice is, just, kill them.
Well, that's what they wanted with this guy, right? Well, like, because there was the possibility of a firing squad, which I don't think was ever going to be a possibility, but that's, what I guess Idaho has as their.
Some states have that, right? But the question that I think there's an interest. When I got out of prison, I mean, I had this amazing experience in prison, right? Not only did I get an education and build opportunities, and I came home. I got married in prison. I came home.
You were probably, though, how many people are like you in prison?
Everybody. Everybody's like me. I'm not special.
Maybe everybody is like you, but not very many people in prison or out of prison. Let's just be really honest, Michael. Not a lot of people are like you. Not a lot of people have the drive that you do, or even, I mean, especially not learned. Like a person that goes to prison, like you said, are usually on the lower income. They probably haven't had somebody in their life to inspire them to be better or make better choices.
And that's society's fault.
That is society's fault. So I'm saying maybe deep down inside they are like you, but they haven't gotten there yet. So
when I went to prison, remember, and this happens. Like I, as an advocate and a speaker, I'll come out and say, people will say that to me a lot. Not everybody could do what you do. I said, I'll say that now. I'm successful and I do what I do. Okay. And you can look at me and you can say that now. But remember who I was when I went in. I should be 300 years in prison.
Yes.
Okay. That's what society saw. When Helene Flowers went in, double life. Okay. Yeah. What is he now? Okay. I mean, if we're, in a Christian nation, okay, and we look any person, we don't know what their future is.
Yeah.
I have no idea what anybody's future is. All I know is that prison is never the answer. And if vengeance is the answer, then we should look historically. When I taught this course, when I got out of prison, I taught this course called The Architecture of Incarceration. And it showed how we as Western civilization respond to lawbreakers historically. And if you go to the medieval times, historically, how did we respond to anybody who broke the law? We would, chop off their head, put it on a stake, light it on fire, and everybody come and cheer for it, right? And that was justice at that time. Okay. But we recognized at some point there was a spectacle. And in fact, there were crimes historically. And I taught us to get scholarly. But at that time, what people would do is they'd come and there were pickpockets and crimes. And they realized maybe this isn't the best approach.
Yeah.
And so there came the Enlightenment era. And we started to believe that maybe we could do something more. And we started to measure justice by time. Because all of us as human beings only have so much time.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that we'd use prison as a response to a crime. I mean, prior to that, you'd put people in jail, but it was only until the punishment, which was killing you, took place. So historically, you would say, well, you started doing this in like the 1800s with the Puritans, the Pilgrims.
Yeah.
I think it was Puritans that were called, from Pennsylvania. Started the penitentiary. And the penitentiary at the start was, we're going to take you out of society for a period of time, because everybody only has so much time.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, a long sentence was 18 months. They'd put you in a cell. They'd put a mask over your head. They'd lead you into a cell, and they'd leave you there with a Bible and say, you're there for 18 months. You don't know anything of what's happening to your family. That was the crime. And theoretically, you'd let them out, and they would go back to society. But what has happened is this whole ecosystem got built around it. And this ecosystem started to feed it, and it started to grow. More prisons, more time, more prison labor. And there was, it's historically, but that's effectively what we're still doing. We're still measuring time as justice. But I would say justice should be a bigger question, a philosophical question. And it should start with, what do you want for the result? Same thing I would imagine we do in business. Be the CEO of your life. You want to have people come back strong and successful, then we should create a system that maybe it's life, maybe it's 50 years, 100 years, I don't know. But maybe there's a path for some people.
Maybe it's not time at all. Maybe it's getting to a place.
You know what we do in Sweden? I'm not from Sweden. But it's an amazing system in Sweden. And I'll tell you what they do. They have this system called the ombudsman system.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a very big fan of that. In fact, all of my work is kind of based on this concept of earning freedom. So you go to prison with whatever sentence you may have. But when you go there, it's the members of the community that will go there, not the prison system, members of the community where the person will be released to.
Yeah.
And they'll sit across the table. They'll sit across the table from us. So you got 45 years. They're going to do 45 years. It's your choice. But maybe we can come up with a contract that if you do these kinds of things while you're here, you could atone or reconcile, and we will decide whether you've done it. And so they develop this contract.
They actually develop good days.
They require somebody to do something.
Like do good days.
And then at time, it is the community that decides, is this person worthy of coming home?
Yeah.
And to me, that is fundamentally different from what we have. And it's what I try to work toward implementing in America. So keep, like the why put him in prison? I mean, he's got a little child. There are a lot of ancillary consequences that come from this.
Yeah.
Broken families, loss of employment. You come home and there's this cycle of failure.
Right.
And this is what I do when I go into prisons and I help people see. There are collateral consequences that follow that will influence every American. And we would be far better off to keep people that aren't a threat to society from going in the first place.
Right.
Because there's a lot of things.
True.
I mean, during COVID, we'd spoken, you moved to Texas during COVID. Well, something happened during COVID in the prisons because they couldn't do the things that they were supposed to do. You couldn't isolate people.
Right.
Everybody's in the community.
Right.
So they'd have let about 15,000 people out of federal prison.
Yeah, I remember that.
15,000. The recidivism rate of that 15,000
tell me.
was like 10 people.
No way.
Yeah, 10 people recidivated and went back to prison.
Okay, so that's a good statistic.
That's a phenomenal statistic, and it's what I really use to try and say you could manage people just as well on home confinement as you can in a prison. Better.
Yeah.
Because their children are going to be apart from their family. Their wives are, why not pay taxes? Why not have the person do something? Now, of course, if it's something like you described.
Well, yeah, that's a different story.
That's a whole different story. Yeah. But even that person, we should think about, does it make sense to create a mechanism where somebody can earn freedom? And if it does, it's not going to be me. I try to create the mechanism.
Yeah.
And I say, it's up to every individual. I have credibility because I did 26 years, and I try to show people that didn't define me. Mm-hmm. I came home and became very successful financially and built my own ministry to try and influence 1 million people's lives.
Yeah,
and that's what I try to show people how to do.
Yeah, that's amazing. And how? Your job is it's quite vast because you're in and out of the prison system.
Yeah.
Right? You are trying to tell people that are in there, hey, you can change your life. You can be like me. You are like me.
I never tell them to be like me.
But like you,
be like you.
I know, but like you are, but you try to give them they are inside themselves successful human beings. They just have to find that success.
People need hope.
Right?
People need hope. And when I go to prison, sometimes, I'll start speaking. They don't know who I am. Right. A lot of times the staff will, Michael Santos did time in prison, and I'll go. And sometimes it's just we have a speaker, and I'll go and they'll say it, and I could see them. That fool was never in prison. Mm-hmm. So you think, I don't look hard enough, and that's why you think I wasn't in prison. But I have a little secret for you. See that was the plan.
Yeah,
to come back out of prison and nobody know I served a day in prison unless I told you. I said, now I tell everybody every day that I did. That's my journey. That's my life. But there's a decision that you're making every single day, and it's either leading you closer to a homeless shelter. And I said, I don't make a judgment. If you want to do this, God bless you. There will be a homeless shelter that will welcome you with open arms when you come home. You will be unemployed, underemployed. You'll have more problems with the law. You'll have no money. Or you can invest in yourself and start developing a mindset that my friend wrote about in his book, Recalibrate, and change your life. And if you do that, opportunities will open. And I said, these are not my words, and don't be like me. Be like anybody else. Be the CEO of your life. Come up with a plan, prioritize actions, develop tools, tactics, and resources, and execute your plan. And own the result. Yeah. And the result will either be poverty or success. It's your choice, not mine.
Yeah. So but in prison now, they have to make their own choice to do that.
But prisons obliterate hope.
Yes.
So I don't only blame the people in prison.
Yes.
The prison system itself is a flawed system. It is anti-American.
So it
is anti-everything.
How do we change it?
We bring prison professors in and expand it. Now, what we have to change it is we have to create mechanisms that will incentivize a pursuit of excellence. Okay? Just like anything else in life. Life is about, are you the best in the world at what you can do?
So has there been one prison that you've been able to go to actually change the entire ecosystem of that prison?
I'm so excited about it. And I'm doing it across the whole nation.
Okay.
So we created a mechanism that I tell people in prison, don't wait for the government to change your life because you're going to have a long wait. Okay. You've got to really develop a pathway. And I tell them the pathway that worked for me. So my story is part of it because I always make 3 promises. I'll never lie to you. I'll never ask you to do something I didn't do. And I'll never ask you to pay me a penny. That's important for me to demonstrate I'm here because I want to be here and do this because I want to be here, number 1. But I said, if you know my story, how did I do it? I didn't allow the government's version of events to define my life. I had to write my own biography. So I'm telling you, you write your own biography. Write your biography. Tell me who you are and why you're worthy of a better shot. You got to convince not me. Convince the world. Convince the readers of your true crime podcast.
Yeah.
Okay? You do it. That's your job. I can't define success for you. You have to do it. That's step 1. Step 2. Every day, show me how hard you're working. Write a journal. And in that journal, define what you're doing and define what are you doing to pursue excellence. Don't convince me, okay? Convince the people that are the most cynical views of you. 3, don't wait for the prison to give you a class. They might not offer you a class. You can educate yourself. Every time you read a book, tell me why you read the book. Or tell me what you learned from reading the book. Tell me how reading this book is going to contribute to your being successful in life. And 4, develop a release plan. Show me that you're deliberate and making intentional decisions with the people you choose to associate with, and in what ways are you winning. And then we built a platform for these people to be able to write to us, and our team will publish that on the prison professor's website. So they have a profile. And we gamify it. So we give points. So every time you're writing, you're earning points.
Yeah.
And now you're going to compete. A guy in Miami is going to compete with a guy in Los Angeles and a guy in New York and Memphis and all over the country. And they're competing. So I'm telling you, you've got to be the CEO of your life. And then if you do this, the prison system is assessing, have you earned your path to a gradually increasing level of liberty? I can't define what that level is, but I delivered this. In fact, I'm going back tomorrow in Victorville, California, which is just inland.
Yeah.
There's 4 federal prisons there. And I spoke there a couple of weeks ago, and the wardens got excited about it. There's 4 wardens there. And they said, okay, whoever earns the most points in this prison is going to get a party at Christmas time. Okay. So then I went to DC and I presented it to the deputy director, and now I can go to all prisons across the country. We're in every state prison in California. So we reach like 1 million people, but it's a very heavy lift. So it's like always work, but I always can tell them, I'm not going to ask you to do something I don't do. So I show them how I do it. I'm very transparent about how those decisions in prison help me become successful in building businesses, and what I do now, all for free.
Yeah. So
it's super cool. And I'm seeing it, and I'm very excited about it because President Trump passed the First Step Act, and he's appointed a lot of people into these positions of power that are insanely better qualified to assess what can we do to the system, because they themselves went through it.
Right.
And they've become successful. So that's where we should be getting, instead of getting clues from a union that has a vested interest in locking people up and so on and so forth, right? That ecosystem is what I am in the business of disrupting.
Yeah. Okay. Prisonprofessors.org.
.org.
Nonprofit. I got that. Yes. It's
Everything's
amazing.
free.
Yes. And do you need donations?
No, I mean, we don't need donations.
How can my audience help you?
I think just learning, right? I think just that you've helped me immensely, and I'm very grateful to you, because just spreading this message, it's a different message. It's not something that is typical. And I mean, anybody could visit prisonprofessors.org. Maybe we incarcerate more people per capita than any other nation. And there's no doubt that people in your audience know people who are going to prison.
100%.
And they should get a copy of Recalibrate. Matt's book is an example of what does it look like to genuinely face a crisis and not allow that crisis to define you, but figure out what you can do. And we have all of those resource. Matt was generous to donate it to our nonprofit, and we get to distribute it along with many others. But I would love your audience just to really open their minds to this concept of what is justice, because when there's an old saying in psychology, when the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And we seem to think that prison is the right response for everybody, and it's not.
But it's not.
It's not. It is if you want to perpetuate intergenerational cycles of failure. But if you want to build a safer, stronger America, we need to make our prison system much more like America, where we are incentivizing a pursuit of excellence, and the harder a person works, the more opportunities open for somebody to build a better life.
Yeah. We didn't talk, and I just want to talk about it, because in prison, you did all these amazing things, but you also made $1 million in prison.
Yeah. I made $1 million in prison.
Which is...
Yeah.
Lots of people don't make $1 million ever. So that is amazing. And you did it without the internet. It was right when the internet was coming, right? Is this what I read? So tell us how you did that.
So I had gotten I was in a PhD. I got my master's, but all the way through I was learning about the internet and learning about, there was no cell phones when I went to prison, no text, no email, nothing. And, I used to dream about the internet, because what is it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't understand. Tell me, how do you get on the internet? What is it? But I'm reading about it, and I'm learning about investments. So I'm really educating myself in prison and learning about investments. And I got a master's degree, and then I was in a PhD program, and then the warden blocked me from getting my PhD.
Why?
Because this is a different era, right? This is an era when I told you that Clinton was in that, and Biden had passed this thing called the No Frills Prisons Bill, and they didn't want people getting an education in prison. I remember a warden.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I remember a warden telling me, it said out there, federal prison. It doesn't say federal university, and people don't want a person getting a PhD. And so I went through because school had been my whole journey as my 8th year. And I did the first year in PhD, and then they blocked me. And the way they could block me is they control the mailroom. So they can decide what books come in. And so I was at University of Connecticut, and they so we're not going to accept any more mail from University of Connecticut. If I can't get books, I can't complete the coursework.
Yeah.
So I have to figure out what am I going to do. And I was a writer, and I'm writing and earning a little money. I mean, little money, a couple $1,000s. And I remember getting the first thing was $2,000. My sister got it for me, and she called. She said, "What do you want me to do with this $2,000?" I read this thing about the internet, and I really want to. This is like 1998, and I said, "I want you to open a brokerage account for me. There's this thing called E-Trade." And she says, "What's E-Trade?" And I said, "You got to go on the online." So she goes online. And she says, "Well, I don't want to put my credit card in here.
Yeah,
this is the internet." And I said, "Don't be such a pussy,
get it done. I have $2,000 to make some money."
And she said, and I said, "And you have to open this account for me." And she said, "Well, what should I do?" I said, "I want you to buy this stock. It's called Yahoo." And she said, "What's a Yahoo?" And I said, I don't really know, but it does the internet stuff. And, you go there and you plug your stuff in. And she said, well, it has an exclamation point. Just find it. And so she does. And so I said, when you open the account, it's $2,000, but you can use margin. So buy $3,000 worth of Yahoo.
Mm-hmm.
And so she does. And that's how I got started. And Yahoo was like buying Bitcoin at 10 cents.
Yeah.
Okay. At that time.
That was awesome. Please.
So
sign me up.
That started. And then as it rose, and it was rising at that time in 1998, the internet was just getting traction. Yeah. And every time it rose, I would get more buying power. So I kept borrowing against my equity and buying more. And before you know it, I had then 1,000 shares or something. And it rose. That's how I made the first million in prison when I was in like my 12th year or so. And then, it was like 2 million, but I had owned $1 million in debt because I kept borrowing from the brokerage house. So I made $1 million, and then the market imploded and I lost a ton, but I still made enough to change my life. I had like after taxes and everything, I allowed like $100,000 or something. And that allowed me to get married while I was in prison.
Yeah. Okay. So that is also amazing. So how did you meet your wife in prison?
So it's a funny story. I told you I was writing for books that college students would read.
Yeah.
So my mentors were university professors at Stanford and Chicago and Harvard and Princeton, and they would allow me to publish with them. Mm-hmm. So these books are being read all across the country for people who are studying criminal justice. And it was kind of my way of starting an advocacy campaign because I'm writing, what could we do differently?
Yeah.
And some student, when the internet started, starts researching me. And he is researching a high school where I graduated from Shorecrest High School in 1982 in Seattle. And they were doing in 2001, getting ready for the 20-year reunion.
Okay.
And Carol is the one that was doing the reunion. And this kid writes to her and said, is this the same high school where Michael Santos went to school? She said, yeah, why are you writing about Michael Santos? He said, well, he's in prison and I read his stuff. And that led Carol to write me a letter in prison. And initially the letter was, she was not my friend in high school. I was a kind of what some might call a bad kid. And she was a good girl and she had the good sense to stay away from me at that time. Yeah. So she wrote me a letter and basically, I can't believe you sold drugs and you were always, a fast kid and, I'm a mother of 2 kids and drugs are bad. And, and I said, well, yeah, but I'm 35 now, I was 20 and that led to a friendship and a correspondence. And then she came to visit me after like 10 months and we fell in love in a prison visiting room and we got married.
Oh my
God. It's been like, 23 years now. So.
23 years. And how long were you married while you were in prison?
She was with me for the last 10 years of the journey.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah, she was great. And through my work, I was able to support her and she went and became a nurse. And the whole idea was that she'd visit me every time I was visiting was allowed, and she'd move around with me, and so she became a real
like a traveling nurse. Was she one of those?
She had to really go through everything because she was also my age, right? So she was like 37 when we got married, and then we got married in New Jersey, and then they moved me to Colorado.
Oh my God!
And I only had like $100,000 at that time because remember the market had come down. So I said, okay, well. I said, geez, I'm not going to have enough to support you the whole journey. We got to find something for you to do. And she's the one that said, I could be a nurse and I could work anywhere. I said, great, use the $100,000 and go to nursing school. And so that supported her. And so she had to go, but it's, studying algebra was tough in the 8th grade. It's much tougher when you're 37.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So she had to go through all this stuff and she did it. And she was just committed to the program. And it was always a plan that said, so it took her a few years, and then she became an RN, and then she came home, and I was building my businesses, and she was a nurse, and now she pretty much works with a nonprofit full time.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, your journey is truly an amazing one, and I feel like also you're just getting started.
I am. I feel like right now is an amazing time. It's an amazing time to be an American. I just look at, there's always more opportunities in the future than in the past. But I'm very bullish that not only is our country going in a great direction, but I also believe that the criminal justice system is going in a great direction where you have, I mean, let's just be honest. If the election went the other way, the one thing I love about President Trump is we both share something in common. We both have a mugshot. So,
That's funny.
he really gets that this system is weaponized and it's a bad system and we need to revise it. And he's not afraid to make decisions.
Yeah, I hope that does work out. And I hope it continues.
I don't like to get political in the sense, but I think that leadership it requires courage.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that didn't have that courage, that should have had that courage. I mean, President Clinton is a great example. He pardoned a lot of people when he got at the end of his term. And then he had the audacity to say after it was over, that's when he said, well, there's a lot more people that should have gotten out of prison. Well, that's not the time to say it. It takes courage to do it while you're in office.
What happened while you were there for 8 years?
Right. And so I've seen that because I was in prison during Ronald Reagan, Bush 1, who was next? Clinton, Bush 1, Bush 2, Obama. I got out in the second Obama. So I mean, I was in every journey and have seen, I saw the system. And when I was, in prison, politics is very important because the president appoints the attorney general appoints the director of the Bureau of Prisons. Mm-hmm. The director of the Bureau of Prisons sets policy that affects hundreds of thousands of people. So it was very important to me when I was in there. When I got out, and I've been out since 2013. Yeah. It's much more important for me to just help people realize. There's a great saying that Ronald Reagan said. It said 9 words no American ever wants to hear. I'm with the government and I'm here to help. So I'm a big believer that my role is to try and help people see that, regardless of political philosophy. Government has not been a great solution in running prisons. Mm-hmm. And as much as we as Americans believe this is the only thing, it takes the courage of somebody like you to have somebody like me on your show to communicate to people that don't really understand it. Yeah. And this is something that I do understand and want to improve outcomes for all people.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you for doing what you do. I mean,
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I appreciate it. I think I could talk to you for so much longer. Your life is amazing and you're doing amazing things. So thank you.
Appreciate you for having me on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And everybody, please go and visit his website. If you know somebody that's in prison, a lot of people do, right?
Prisonprofessors.org. Everything is free.
Yeah.
And look at it. And if you follow us on social, most of our audience is in prison, but we like to spread the message of keeping people like Matt Boyer out of prison.
Yes, 100%. All right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Wow, you guys. That interview, I could not wait for you all to hear it. Michael Santos is truly proof that your past does not have to define your future. Whether you agree with his sentence or not, there is no denying that his discipline and his will to take prison and turn it into personal growth instead of defeat is remarkable. His story isn't just about doing time, it's really about using time. And I truly respect this man beyond. And if you or someone you love is facing the justice system, the resources are out there, and Michael has made it his mission to help people. So find him and follow him, and just really, his organization is one that I truly, truly want to support, because I think prison reform is something that is a dire need in our country. And I will look to Michael to help me do that. So until next time, you guys, I hope you liked this Wake Up Wednesday episode. If you did, please give me a review. And on Apple, Spotify, wherever. You can also communicate with me on Spotify. Let me know if you want more interviews like this. Clink, clink.